All right, we are recording now, so I can take that part out later. But this is our shapes file. We're going to be using this one, and there are a handful of different shapes, different directions, angles, curves, all that fun stuff that are going to be used to trace. If we tried to trace this one right now, we haven't isolated the image, this part right here. And so if we started things, it would actually save it on top of this layer. We don't want to save it on top of this layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the Layers tab. Zoom in there. Layers tab. And where it says Layer 1, we're going to click the Lock button. So if you want to do that right now, go into Illustrator. It says Properties, Layers, and Libraries. We're going to click the open space that says Toggles Lock. And what that's going to do is lock this image so that we cannot edit it. Now you see that the pencil that was on there, now it has a no symbol next to it, and it will not allow you to edit this thing anymore because it is a locked layer. And then just like Photoshop and all the other Adobe software, down at the bottom of this Layers tab, you can create a new layer. At the very bottom, create a new layer, and it should put a brand new layer on top of layer 1 called layer 2. There's my new layer. If you notice that this has two different colors, there's a blue color and there's a red color. Layer 1 is blue, layer 2 is red. If I click another one, it's going to be green, and then I think another blue one, and then a purple one or pink one, a teal, yellow, gray, black, orange. It keeps going. These are, get rid of this really quick. I just made copies of them. That's hilarious. Let me get rid of these. Didn't go all over the trash can. There we go. This is going to be the color. If you remember yesterday when we were creating shapes and we had a blue anchor point and a blue path, this is going to create red anchor points and red paths because I'm using the second layer that has red. That way, if you're creating multiple layers, every time you create a new layer, it's going to be whatever color that one is. So if I go back here to layer number 2, now I'm working with the red path again, and just so you're aware of that process. That's why it's going to be red this time. Get rid of that guy. So out here on the shapes, there are a number of different shapes to use. They are very easy to trace for the most part. You can use your Option button and 2 fingers to zoom in so you get even closer. If you take your finger off Option, you can move around on the screen so you can see exactly what you want to be clicking on. One of the neat things, and I saw it on a couple people's computers yesterday, do you see how I have this pen? If I click the caps lock key, it turns into a target, an X. Makes it a lot easier sometimes to get into the exact spot that you need to click to get there, without having to worry about where is the end of that pen, because sometimes it gets confusing on where the end of the pen is. So if you accidentally press the caps lock key yesterday, then it turns this thing into an X. I just learned this a couple months ago, so it's relatively new. I didn't know that this was a feature. So we're going to trace each of these shapes, and then the other thing we're going to do with the shapes is we're going to create a different, if you go to the Properties tab, you're going to create a different fill color and stroke color, and maybe even the stroke size, so that way we can see what it looks like a little bit differently. So each shape is going to have a different fill color and a different stroke color. And one other thing, as you're doing this one, if I come to about this spot and I draw past where the curve is, so I could stop here and draw a curve around there, but I showed you how to do that curve feature yesterday. So if I go like this, and then I use my Command key and pull this back, I can do an automatic curve around that edge very quickly. like this, bring it back a little bit so I can see exactly where it is. And I make my rounded rectangles that way. I could also select everything on here and do them all at once. A little too far, bring it back so it's right to the edge. And now I have my rounded rectangles all at once. That's using the command key on the anchors. All right, so if I come down here, I'm going to go down. The circles are relatively easy. Star is easy. Wi-Fi signal, relatively easy as well. We get to like the fire. This one's a little more difficult, only because it has multiple curves that go different directions. So in the Bezier game that we've been working with, every time you create an anchor point and you drag that out there like this, as soon as I let go on that game, I am not able to modify this anchor point again. However, in Adobe Illustrator, if I press the Option key, it gives me the ability to adjust this handlebar and make changes after the fact. So I don't have to have it exact if it doesn't go exactly, or if I forget to do this in the first place, I don't have to redo it all again. I can always come back to it and start stuff new. So let's see. So when I'm working with this one, if I try to do this right here, you'll see that it doesn't line up the right way, and so I'll actually have to grab this a little bit differently and kind of move it around, manipulate it as you need. Okay, so whoops, I forgot to adjust this one back this way. So I'm going to do Option and bring it back up here, and now I can do that a little bit, bring this one over this way. I have to rematch this one. And again, we're working with the fill color, and we're working with a stroke color. And then if I increase the stroke size, I can see it a little bit better, but it's really hard. If I'm trying to go down this way, it might be a little more difficult to see like what the next part of the path is. And there is another feature on that Properties tab that is called the opacity, which we saw in Photoshop before. And that allows us to change how much you are able to see through the shape. And in this case, I changed it to 50% just because that'll give me a better way of seeing the background or what's behind the shape that I'm working on. So like right there, if it was all the way completely solid, I wouldn't be able to see anything here, but there we go. I finish this one up, and this one is kind of, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Undo. Gonna grab this one and bring it back a little bit. There we go. And then I have this cool shape. It has its own color, its own stroke color, and it follows that path fairly closely. I'm not looking for it to be maybe 100%. I want you to get as close as you can. So as you're working through here, you might have to practice a little bit, undo some things, Command Z to undo, and then as you're working through these shapes, make sure you're tracing them, but you're also doing a different color and fill color and stroke color for them as you go. You could trace them all at first and then go back through and change the stroke color and fill color. Let me know if you have any questions.